When you hear Hemi, chances are Chrysler pops into your head. This makes sense because they've practically made it their trademark. But here's the thing, Chrysler wasn't the only one playing with hemispherical combustion chambers. Plenty of other manufacturers, big names you'd recognize and a few smaller ones you probably wouldn't, got in on the action too. Sure, Chrysler, or FCA as they call themselves now, has the Hemi name locked down tight in the minds of gearheads everywhere, but they're not the only stars in this engine story. Some of the most legendary performance brands have their own place in Hemi history, and for a fact, there's not a single Pentastar branded part to be found in their design. Before we dive into the good stuff, let's take a second to talk about what a Hemi actually is. A Hemi, short for hemispherical, refers to the shape of the combustion chamber in the engine. It's got this dome-like design, and here's why that's clever. The valves are angled towards the center of the cylinder, which means more air and fuel can flow in. More air, more fuel, more power. Compared to the flat, wedge-shaped combustion chambers in some other engines, the Hemi design makes everything more efficient. It's all about squeezing every last bit of performance out of the engine. The Lyons small block Chevy Hemi conversion cylinder heads, dubbed some of the rarest speed parts ever, make the Ford Arden flathead Hemi conversion look like it came straight off a mass production line. And that's saying something. Lyons ran a small operation out of San Bernardino, California, where he designed and built these Hemi head conversion kits for small block Chevys. Let's just say you won't be finding one at your local swap meet anytime soon. Nick Arias Jr. is a name that gets engine builders nodding in respect. He was a true pioneer in the world of horsepower. When the Chrysler Hemi started dominating NHRA drag racing, Nick wasn't the type to sit back and watch. For Arias, engine building isn't just about improving existing designs, it's about creating something entirely new, starting from a blank slate. As he says, you can make a great street engine from a race engine, but you can't make a great race engine from a street engine. He started tinkering with his own Hemi designs and developed a unique Hemi head conversion for the big block Chevy motor, but it never really caught on. He didn't give up on the Hemi dream though. With the help of close collaborator Lanny Treves, the two combined their expertise to develop a custom Hemi head for Ford's Windsor small block. The goal was to create a package that could deliver extreme horsepower for racing, but also be reliable enough for street use. The result was an engine that showcased both Arias' legendary design skills and the raw power of a Hemi configuration. At the 2011 AmSoil Engine Masters Challenge, the 427 Ci engine proved its potential by producing 748 horsepower, even with a last-minute intake swap. The Arias Shelby Hemi heads delivered impressive performance, solidifying Arias' reputation as a visionary in the world of custom engines. Mickey Thompson was the kind of guy who always landed on his feet, especially when it came to racing deals. He knew how to play the game, and when GM pulled out of motorsports in 1963, leaving racers high and dry, Mickey didn't miss a beat. By 1964, he was back in action with a Ford deal. His IndyCar team, which had been running Buick and Chevy aluminum small blocks and the DOHC Chevy engine he was developing, switched over to Ford's legendary Indy 4 Cammers. Meanwhile, another exotic MT project, a Hemi head package Mickey had developed for the Pontiac V8, was transferred to Ford's big block FE engine. Thompson's work in creating this exotic Hemi head package for the Ford FE engine was a part of his broader strategy to push the envelope in racing technology. While the project didn't achieve widespread adoption, it remains a unique piece of racing history. Now, the Chevy LS Hemi might sound like a bit of a weird combo at first, but trust me, it works. Basically, it takes the heart of a Gen 4 LS engine and adds a Hemi-style head to the mix. Think of it as a wild mashup between the best of both worlds. The power of the LS with the breathing power of the Mopar Hemi design. What makes this so unique is that it started with heads designed for a small block Ford, then was adapted to fit the LS engine. You're getting the beefy LS block with the breathing potential of a Hemi. Kinda like getting the best of both worlds and slapping them together. It's not your typical build, but it works, and it's a ton of fun to learn about. The Chevy LS Hemi wouldn't have been a thought without Hammerhead's earlier small block Ford Hemi, and that whole project traces back to Greg Brown at Hammerhead. He worked for years alongside the legendary John Case, a master of the Boss 429 Hemi. In fact, Greg was at the 2012 Engine Masters Challenge when Nick Arias Jr. showed up with his own Hemi-headed small block Ford, making quite an impression on everyone. Greg wasn't just flying blind here. He'd already teamed up with Case to design bolt-on Hemi heads for the Ford 460, and he used that experience to design the Hammerhead Hemi units. He drew inspiration from all over the place, especially from Arias' own efforts, to make sure his heads would not only perform, but also fit into what the market was asking for. So when the Chevy LS Hemi started to take shape, it's really no surprise that Hammerhead's work on the Ford Hemi was part of the foundation. The lessons learned from one project carried over to the next, and it just goes to show how the racing world and engine building are always connected in ways you might not expect. In 1967, Chevrolet was busy promoting their new pony car, the Camaro, and part of the promotional efforts included racing the Camaro in the SCCA Trans Am Series. Back then, racing in the SCCA Trans Am Series was a huge deal, and Ford and Chevy were battling it out for dominance. Chevy needed an edge, so they developed a Hemi-headed small block Chevy with a 302 cubic inch displacement that was fully SCCA sanctioned. Sounds like a game changer, right? Well, the idea never really got the green light from the higher-ups at Chevy, and the project fizzled out. But here's a twist. One of those prototype engines ended up in the hands of none other than Smokey Yunick, the legendary mechanic and builder. Smokey did what Smokey does best and massaged the engine before dropping it into a 1969 Camaro Z28, which is now owned by Rick George. So while the small block Hemi didn't exactly change the racing world, it's a fascinating chapter in Chevy's history, and it's still a pretty cool piece of muscle car lore. One might be thinking the John Case Racing Engine's Boss 9 Hemi conversion is just a knockoff of the iconic Ford Boss 429, but you'd be way off. While it might look similar to the original, the Boss 9 actually uses a standard Ford 460 passenger car block, not the special prep work Ford did for the original Boss 429. It's a different beast altogether, with the intake and exhaust ports placed where you'd expect them in a Ford 460, not the tricky Boss 429 spots. The JKRE Boss 9 looks just like the original Boss 429 on the outside, but without all the crazy block prep that the original required. And when talking performance, this setup is a monster. With a simple 460 base short block and a stroker kit, the Boss 9 can pump out nearly 1,000 horsepower on pump gas, something the original could only dream of. Unlike many of the engines on the list, you can actually still buy this one today, and it'll cost you a fraction of what an original Boss 429 would set you back. It's like getting all the performance without the crazy price tag. The Oldsmobile W43 engine is like that mysterious legend you've heard about but can't quite pin down. Some say it's a Hemi, others claim it was a Can-Am engine, and a few even talk about it having double overhead cams, but none of that is true. In reality, the W43 was a regular pushrod V8, just like the ones Detroit was known for, but with a few very special upgrades. It had 4 valves per cylinder, thanks to some fancy cylinder heads and a unique valve train. This engine was based on the standard 455 CID production block, but with some crucial tweaks. It got 4-bolt main caps and special valve follower retainers bolted into the lifter valley, making it a little more beefed up than your standard engine. As for the spark plugs, they were tucked away in tubes in the valve covers, which, of course, led to the whole "is it a Hemi" debate. There was even an aluminum block version called the OW43, and it didn't stop there. The W43 program later birthed an experimental 4-cam 32-valve V8 that still shared the original engine's bones. It's a wild chapter in automotive history, but one that's more about innovation than myth-making. When it comes to legendary American luxury and performance, few names hold as much weight as Duesenberg. Known for their opulence, innovation, and attention to detail, Duesenberg cars were the epitome of pre-war automotive excellence. One of their most fascinating and rare engines was the straight 8 Hemi, which became the backbone of their high-performance cars in the late 1920s and 1930s. The Duesenberg straight 8 wasn't just another inline 8-cylinder engine, it was ahead of its time in many ways, particularly when it came to its hemispherical design. Often referred to as the Hemi, the Duesenberg's head design featured a distinct dome-shaped combustion chamber, similar to the hemispherical setup seen in later performance engines. This allowed for better airflow, increased compression, and ultimately more power. Key elements in Duesenberg's success in both luxury and motorsports. The engine itself was a marvel of engineering, with individual cylinder heads for each of its 8 cylinders, which was quite advanced for the era. It was designed with dual overhead camshafts and was capable of producing up to 265 horsepower, an astonishing amount for its time. Though not often thought of when discussing Hemi engines, the Duesenberg straight 8 was certainly one of the early examples of the performance benefits a hemispherical design could offer. Its power and smoothness, combined with the company's lavish engineering, made it one of the most sought-after engines in the world, with many of these cars still commanding high prices at auctions today. Despite its power and advanced design, the Duesenberg straight 8 was part of a relatively short-lived period in automotive history. Production of Duesenberg vehicles ended in the mid-1930s, but their legacy as makers of performance luxury cars lives on through their groundbreaking engine designs. The Tatra 603 V8, the car that's as quirky as it is cool. This was a Czechoslovakian luxury sedan that made its debut in the 1950s. With its rear engine, rear-wheel drive setup, and a design that looks like something straight out of a futuristic movie, the Tatra 603 was built to stand out. Under the hood, you'd find a 2.5-liter V8 engine, which was pretty impressive at the time. It wasn't just about raw power, though. The Tatra 603 was known for being incredibly comfortable and smooth to drive, almost like cruising on a cloud. It was even used by high-ranking officials in Czechoslovakia, which gives you an idea of how much the government trusted this unique machine. Now, the Tatra 603 may not have had the mass-market appeal of a Porsche or a Cadillac, but it had something those cars didn't: character. The unique design and solid engineering made it a symbol of Czech innovation, and even today, it stands as one of the most interesting cars from behind the Iron Curtain. If you ever come across one, you'll probably do a double take because it's not just a car, it's a rolling piece of history. Chrysler Australia built an engine capable of surpassing performance that actually set records in Australia, but it came with problems. They were trying to make their Valiant lineup more appealing, with sporty variants like the Pacer and Charger, but there was one big issue: speed. The slant 6 engine just wasn't built for performance, and even the 340 cubic inch V8 didn't have the punch needed for Australian racing or driving. So Chrysler needed something new, something lightweight, powerful, and a perfect front-rear weight balance. They couldn't just use their usual V8s because, let's face it, they didn't exactly fit the bill. The slant 6 can only be pushed so far, topping out at around 225 cubic inches, so Chrysler had to get creative and design a whole new engine for the Aussie market. What they came up with was a series of engines: 215, 245, and 265 cubic inches, all with the Hemi-style heads and a punchy setup. The top model even had 3 Weber 2-barrel carburetors. Talk about performance! The result? A Chrysler Valiant Charger with this engine setup set a speed record that stood for over a decade. It held its ground against the big boys like GM and Ford, proving that Chrysler could definitely go toe-to-toe with anyone when it came to performance. The Panhard 24 is a compact 2-door coupe automobile produced between 1964 and 1967 by French manufacturer Panhard. This car was part of Panhard's attempt to create a stylish, sportier coupe, and it definitely stood out in the crowd. With its sleek design and rounded body, the 24CT looked futuristic for its time, kind of like a French take on the sporty compact. But what really made it special was how it balanced everyday driving with a touch of flair. Under the hood, the Panhard 24CT wasn't packing a giant engine, but it didn't need one. It came with a 848cc 2-cylinder air-cooled engine that produced about 60 horsepower. It might sound small, but because of the car's lightweight design, that little engine made the 24CT surprisingly peppy. The engine's unique construction and air-cooled design gave the car a distinct, almost quirky character that you won't find in many other cars of that era. Sporting a lightweight alloy construction, roller-bearing crankshaft, and non-detachable hemispherical heads housing valves operated by tiny torsion bars, the Panhard's engine came from some lofty engineering ideals while staying grounded and fun. The 24CT wasn't a powerhouse, but it had enough fun factor to make it memorable. It was quick enough to enjoy driving, especially on the twisty roads of France, and offered a lot of charm with its advanced suspension system and lightweight build. It may not have made a huge impact globally, but for those who know, the Panhard 24CT is a gem that really represents a different kind of French automotive engineering. Case really showed off what they could do when they took the original 385 series cylinder heads and gave them a major upgrade. They fixed some long-standing issues by relocating the valves, redesigning the combustion chambers, and reworking the intake and exhaust ports. The result? For the first time ever, the 385 series engine finally surpassed the legendary Boss 429's 350 CFM intake flow, thanks to Case's work with Ford, which led to the new Super Cobra Jet heads. But Case didn't stop there. Wanting to reach the street performance crowd, they kept refining those heads and came out with the P51 variants, which now flow up to 400 CFM on the intake side. They've kept the 72cc combustion chambers so you can still run regular pump fuel, and you can even experiment with different compression ratios by changing up the pistons a bit. The best part? These heads came fully CNC machined and feature bigger 2.25-inch intake valves, all while retaining the same exhaust valves and rocker gear setup. What's great about the P51 heads is that they work with the original intake and exhaust port locations, so you don't have to deal with any major changes in that area. Just keep in mind, you'll need longer push rods to accommodate the new valve geometry. Overall, these heads are a huge step up and a great option if you're looking to push your 385 series engine to the next level. Back in the late 60s, Chrysler's 426 Street Hemi was ruling the streets, no doubt about it. But while it was a powerhouse, the big 8-barrel engine wasn't exactly affordable. They only produced about 9,000 of them between 1966 and 1972, so the price tag was pretty steep. To add to that, Chrysler's other big engines, like the 383 400 and 440, were based on 2 different short blocks, which made things even more complicated and costly. So they came up with the ball stud Hemi, hoping to solve all these issues. Now, the ball stud Hemi was designed to be a high-performance engine, but at a lower cost and for easier production. The plan was to make a pair of 400 and 440 cubic inch engines that shared a lot of similarities, including a new rocker arm design that would save weight and reduce costs. The idea was to have one common low-deck cylinder block for all the big engines, which made sense for assembly line production. It wasn't going to be a race engine, just a solid production power plant. This engine was in the works around 1971 to 1973, and it was supposed to replace 3 different blocks and 2 head designs. Chrysler stuck with the hemispherical combustion chamber, mainly because it's part of their tradition, but also because of its design benefits, like big valves and cross-flow chambers. Some designers even considered bumping up the displacement a bit, giving the 440 a 444 badge for some added marketing flair. But in the end, this engine was all about getting more bang for the buck in production, not racing. The Oldsmobile 455 cubic inch Hemi conversion is a really wild project that you might not have heard about. Back in the 70s, someone had the brilliant idea to take Oldsmobile's already powerful 455 cubic inch V8 and slap on a Hemi head conversion. The result was an engine that combined the best of both worlds, Oldsmobile's muscle with the raw power potential of the Hemi design. It was pretty much a performance enthusiast's dream come true. Now, the 455 cubic inch engine in its original form was no slouch. It already churned out plenty of torque and power, making it a favorite for muscle car fans. But by swapping in Hemi heads, this conversion took things to the next level, increasing airflow and boosting power potential. Imagine taking a classic muscle car engine and giving it a new set of lungs. That's basically what this conversion did, allowing for more fuel and air to get in and giving you an engine that could make some serious noise on the street or the track. This conversion wasn't exactly mainstream, but for those who got their hands on one, it was an absolute monster. The Oldsmobile 455 cubic inch Hemi conversion wasn't just about the numbers, it was about taking an iconic engine and pushing it into some uncharted territory. It's not every day you get to see an Oldsmobile with a Hemi heart, and that's part of what makes this swap so special. There's no denying that the Hemi engine has cemented its place in automotive history, whether it's Chrysler's legendary 426 Hemi or the experimental one-off conversions that some racers and enthusiasts have dreamed up. While Chrysler remains the most well-known producer of Hemi engines, other manufacturers like Ford, Chevy, and Cadillac have also contributed their own unique takes on this groundbreaking design. From race cars to street machines, the Hemi continues to embody the pursuit of power and performance, making these rare engines true icons in the world of high-performance vehicles. That's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.